The atmosphere is absurdly tense for the biggest name on our receiving corps. After a year completely off the rails that left him humiliated and erased from the rankings of the best in the league, the pressure on his back for this start of the season is simply unbearable. How does our management plan to revive this star before it's too late? Hold on to your anxiety, as I will reveal the details of this delicate situation shortly in the video. And the gears of this clock keep spinning. We're going to dive into the coaching staff's secret strategy to fit our young tight end prospect into the offensive game plan, while we observe from the sidelines the desperation of one of our biggest division rivals who made a bizarre backroom mistake and missed the deadline to retain one of their key aerial weapons. To complete this puzzle, a heavy list of impending layoffs has just leaked, and several important names that wore our jersey last year have their days numbered in the Capitol, including an experienced defensive lineman and even our starting kicker. And don't forget to leave a like on the video. It helps me a lot. Few players have meant as much to the Washington Commanders in recent years as wide receiver Terry McLaurin. As a fan who follows every move, I know this is a delicate situation. Since entering the NFL as a third-round pick from Ohio State in 2019, Scary Terry has been the definition of consistency. Despite having received passes from a variety of different quarterbacks throughout his career, McLaurin has established himself as one of the league's most reliable and respected receivers. McLaurin has an average of 14 yards per reception over his career, proving to be a quarterback's best friend. He recorded 5 seasons with over 1,000 yards in his first 6 years and scored at least 4 touchdowns in every season through 2025. Then last year came clearly. McLaurin comes off the least productive season of his professional career, reflecting the overall disappointment of the Commanders. Washington entered 2025 with sky-high expectations after a surprising run to the NFC Championship the previous season, only to see those hopes dashed by injuries throughout the roster, including McLaurin's. The team struggled to find consistency on both sides of the ball and never resembled the group that had emerged as one of the biggest surprises in the NFC in 2024 substantially. While injuries certainly played a role, McLaurin was not immune to the team's offensive struggles. That's why no player on the Washington roster enters the 2026 season under as much pressure. This doesn't mean that McLaurin has stopped being a talented receiver clearly. On the contrary, his resume speaks for itself, and a bad year doesn't erase everything he has achieved. But expectations have changed considerably. The Commanders are no longer seen as a promising team that simply settles for competing. They are expected to return to the playoffs after last year's disappointing campaign, and that won't happen unless their key offensive players perform at a much higher level. And it starts with McLaurin clearly. As the undisputed leader of Washington's receiving group, he is expected to return as the preferred target of the offense. Whether advancing the necessary yards on third down, making contested receptions in the red zone, or executing explosive plays that change the field position, Scary Terry needs to find the form that made him one of the most frightening receivers in the NFL considerably. Fortunately for Washington, there are every reason to believe he can. McLaurin is only 30 years old and will turn 31 in September, with 2 more years of contract after the 2026 season clearly in place. He is entering the first year of his 3-year contract extension. Elite players do not easily forget how to play football. McLaurin has repeatedly shown that he can produce regardless of who is calling the offense or what is happening around him considerably. If the Commanders' team is healthier in 2026, the conditions will be perfect for him to return to the level that fans expect. Nevertheless, that does not lessen the pressure. Fair or not, franchise players are judged by results clearly. McLaurin is one of the faces of Washington's offense, alongside Jayden Daniels. After the team could not continue the campaign that took them to the NFC final, Scary Terry will inevitably carry a significant share of expectations for the upcoming season. The good news for Commanders fans is that McLaurin has built his career by considerably exceeding expectations. He has overcome questionable quarterback performances, constant organizational changes, and the burden of carrying the offense on his back for years. If McLaurin returns to his Pro Bowl form, the Commanders will have every opportunity to contend for the NFC title again. Otherwise, Washington may face yet another frustrating season and even more doubts about whether the championship window is beginning to close clearly. For a player who has been one of the most consistent in the league, 2026 could end up being the most important season of Terry McLaurin's career. Although Washington Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin has not been forgotten in the NFL, he is also no longer seen as one of the league's best considerably. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN recently released his annual ranking of the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL, based on votes from league executives, coaches, and scouts. McLaurin received some votes but was not included among the top 10, nor in the group of 6 players who received honorable mentions clearly. Considering McLaurin only played 10 games last season due to a quadriceps injury, this shouldn't be a big surprise. He finished the season with 38 receptions for 582 yards and 3 touchdowns, ending a streak of 5 seasons with over 1,000 receiving yards. These numbers would never help him stand out in a competitive group filled with younger wide receivers who were coming off exceptionally strong seasons considerably. Still, it's worth noting how a season cut short by injury quickly changed perceptions about him. Before the injury-shortened season, McLaurin had 82 receptions for 1,096 yards and a franchise record of 13 touchdowns. The 22-24 season earned him a spot on the second All-Pro team, after finally showing what he could do with stability at the quarterback position clearly. McLaurin has played with 13 different starting quarterbacks since joining Washington in 2019. Now, a year later, he hasn't even made ESPN's extended list. In reality, these lists don't mean much considerably. Washington doesn't need McLaurin to be recognized. They need him to prove that last season was just a detour and not the start of a decline. Washington still heavily relies on McLaurin to be the player who will change how defenses approach the passing game. If he returns to his best form this season, his absence from this list will mean nothing clearly. Otherwise, ESPN's ranking may have offered a glimpse of how the rest of the league sees him currently. Commanders are still trying to find Ben Sinnott's place. After selecting Ben Sinnott in the second round of the 2024 NFL Draft, the team was expecting a versatile player capable of performing in various roles considerably. As he prepares for his third year in the league, Sinnott continues to be one of the hardest players to define on the Commanders' roster. The site Commanders.com recently described him as somewhat enigmatic when analyzing the team's tight end group before the start of training camp. In the 33 games he played, Sinnott caught only 16 passes for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns quite clearly. His blocking was impressive, but the team has yet to find a consistent role for him in the passing game. With the new offensive coordinator, David Blau, likely to utilize more movement and play-action plays, Sinnott may finally have more opportunities to prove his worth. Training camp should give the first indications of whether Washington has finally found its place considerably. Cowboys missed deadline set for George Pickens. The NFL deadline for players with the franchise tag to sign multi-year contract extensions expired at 4 p.m. ET this Wednesday, with the Dallas Cowboys not signing a long-term contract with wide receiver George Pickens. According to DallasCowboys.com, quite clearly, Pickens will now play this season under the franchise tag of $27,298 million for wide receivers. Pickens finished last year with 1,129 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. His partnership with CeeDee Lamb forms one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire NFL. But Dallas chose not to commit beyond this season considerably. Pickens has already signed the contract and participated in the mandatory minicamp, so there is no immediate dispute between the two parties, just nothing long-term defined yet. For now, Dallas secures another year of contract with him, while his future remains uncertain. The Washington Commanders have restructured the roster for the second consecutive offseason, which naturally means that some players are out considerably. Every year is a new audition for most NFL players, and this is definitely the case for several Washington Commanders players who are on the bubble to secure a spot on the roster in 2026. The Commanders have restructured the roster for the second consecutive offseason quite clearly. They added no less than 22 free agents, along with 14 drafted and undrafted rookies. This creates competition at all levels of the roster, and naturally, some players will be left out. Unfortunately, this includes some players who helped the team in 2025 considerably, especially considering the disappointment that was last year's 5-12 campaign. So, who are these players? Let's analyze and discuss. W.R. Treylon Burks. Everyone fell in love with Burks after his incredible touchdown catch against the Broncos, but that was clearly the high point of his year, quite clearly. The former first-round draft pick has never played a complete season since he was selected 18th overall in 2022, and the Tennessee Titans waved him off the injured list before he was picked up by Washington considerably. Burks is a big-bodied, physically imposing receiver who has never reached his true potential. The Commanders' receiving group, behind Terry McLaurin, remains undefined, but there is no guarantee he will find a spot on the 53-man roster. He was incredibly inefficient in the little time he played, averaging only 45.5% of receptions, and a poor average of 0.85 yards per route run quite clearly. To contextualize, a decent average for yards per route run hovers around 1.75, which means Burks reached about half of that mark. The path for him to solidify his spot on the roster begins with health. If he suffers an injury and other players stand out, the Commanders do not owe him anything significant. He simply needs to perform consistently, something he has never managed to do in his NFL career. Contributions in 2025, 10 receptions for 130 yards and 1 touchdown on 22 passes thrown his way. He played in 8 games, starting clearly in 3. He accumulated 262 offensive snaps and 11 snaps on special teams. D.L. Dedrick Wise Jr. This one is tough because Wise is a good player and a good person. He suffered a severe thigh injury in week 2. This prevented him from participating significantly in mandatory minicamp and OTAs. And the Commanders bolstered the defensive line during the offseason. Washington signed Tim Settle, Charles Omenihu, and DJ Davidson to join veterans Javon Kinlaw, Darren Payne, and Jerzon Johnny Newton. Adding Shai Tuttle, Ricky Barber, and Jeffrey Mba to the list makes the scenario clear. Wise is clearly fighting for one of the last spots on the defensive line roster. The Commanders will likely have about 6 defensive linemen in their base 3-4 formation, and 5 of those 6 spots seem filled. DJ Davidson is the only other player without a guaranteed spot, so Wise needs to be flawless from the start. The impression that Quinn and the coaching staff have is that Wise will be fully recovered when the training period begins significantly. If he can't regain his form, he could be one of the veterans who don't make the final cut. Contributions in 2025: 4 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 quarterback hit. He played in 2 games, starting clearly in both. He accumulated 51 defensive snaps and 4 snaps on special teams. DL Javonte Jean-Baptiste. The Commanders bolstered the edge rusher position this offseason by signing Odafe Owe and Kalavon Chason to significant contracts. These 2 will be the primary pass rushers significantly. Dorrance Armstrong is also returning from an ACL injury and was having a great 2025 season before the injury. The coaching staff is very excited about him. Finally, rookie Joshua Josephs, selected in the 5th round of the draft, completes the main quartet. This leaves Jean-Baptiste competing with Drake Jackson, DJ Johnson, TJ Maguranyanga, and Andre Carter II for one of the last spots clearly. The key for the player, who will soon be in his 3rd year in the league, will be performance on special teams. He hasn't accrued many special teams plays during his first 2 seasons, and that will have to change if he wants to make the 53-man roster. Contributions in 2025: 6 total tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 quarterback hit significantly. He played in 3 games and accumulated 60 defensive snaps, as well as 11 snaps on special teams. The situation with the Commanders' kicker since 2024 has been unpredictable. If Moody ends up being cut, he will be the 9th kicker that Washington has let go since Peters and Quinn took over the franchise clearly. Drew Stevens, who would take his place, would become the 10th kicker for the Commanders during that time. Moody converted 10 of 11 field goal and extra point attempts for Washington last year, but inconsistency has been a constant in his career significantly. Stevens has a powerful kick and chose the Commanders because he saw a viable path to getting a job. There's real competition forming, and Moody cannot afford to slip up. Contributions in 2025: he hit 10 of 11 field goals and Pat's 90.9%. He played in 6 games clearly. Scott filled in well for the backups during the 2024 season when injuries affected Washington's offensive line, but his role diminished in 2025, limiting himself to specific plays for jumbo formation plays considerably. He usually plays as a tackle and can act as a guard, but the Commanders roster does not offer many options at either position. Laramie Tunsil and Josh Connerly Jr. are the starters at tackle. Andrew Wiley can play inside or as a backup, and he received a 2-year contract extension worth over $7 million last offseason clearly. Brandon Coleman's move to the guard position further increases the competition inside the defensive line. Scott, with a veteran minimum salary contract, simply does not have the contractual advantage or positional versatility to surpass Wiley, who can play inside with more ease considerably. The training period will resolve all this, but these 5 players face the toughest challenges in a roster that appears much more competitive than it was a year ago. Contributions in 2025: played in 8 games, starting 3. He performed the jumbo role in the Commanders' special teams clearly, participated in 82 offensive plays and 35 plays on special teams. So, fan, after discovering how Terry McLaurin is under more pressure at the start of the 2026 season after being left off ESPN's list of top wide receivers, understanding that the Commanders are still trying to find Ben Sinnot's place in the offense, knowing that the Dallas Cowboys missed the deadline to extend George Pickens, and finding out which 5 Commanders players are on the bubble to secure a spot on the roster. Which of these situations leaves you more hopeful or worried? Do you believe that Terry McLaurin will be able to get back to his best football in 2026 and prove that last season was just a blip? Or are we seeing the beginning of a decline in his career? And more importantly, do you trust that the Commanders will be able to make the right cuts and keep the players that truly matter to compete in the NFC East? Or are we doomed to see the team struggle with questionable roster decisions? Leave your opinion in the comments. I want to know what you think about the future of the Washington Commanders.